My Bible verse for this week is Psalms 103, verse 1 through 12. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits. Who forgives all your iniquity, who heals your disease, who crowns you with steadfast love and mercy, who satisfies you with good, so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. The Lord works righteousness and justice for all who are oppressed. He made known his ways to Moses, his acts to the people of Israel. The Lord is merciful and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love. He will not always chide, nor will he keep his anger forever. He does not deal with us according to our sins, nor repay us according to our iniquities. For as high as the heavens are above the earth, so great is his steadfast love toward those who fear him. As far as the east is from the west, so far does he remove our transgressions from us. Scripture reading today is Luke 1 through 46 through 55. And Mary said, My soul glorifies the Lord, and my spirits rejoice in God, my Savior, for he has been mindful of the humble estate of his servant. From now on, all generations will call me blessed, for the Mighty One has done great things for me. Holy is his name. His mercy extends to those who fear him from generation to generation. He has performed mighty deeds with his arm. He has scattered those who are proud in their inmost thoughts. He has brought down the rulers from their thrones, but he has lifted up the humble. He has filled the hungry with good things. He has sent the rich away empty. He has helped his servant Israel, remembering to be merciful to Abraham and his descendants forever, just as he promised our ancestors.
Good job. Let's pray. Father, I want to thank you for the Word of God and the difference that it makes in our lives. The inspiration it gives us to live in a way that honors you and benefits us the most. The songs that it's inspired and the hymns that we can sing to give you glory. And especially the announcement that it brings us that Christ has come. And we have the privilege of celebrating his coming in this time of year. And we just want to offer you the praise and the glory and the thanks that are due your name, never missing the opportunity to honor you for your grace, for your mercy, and for the peace that you bring. Help us, Father, as we live the truth of your word, that others may see it, and make us ready always to give an answer to those who ask why we have a hope for the future. Fill us with joy as we give for the work of the church, as we talk about the work of the church, as we participate in the work of the church, all in response to the coming of Jesus Christ. May our joy give you glory. In his name, amen.
I don't think the quartet can follow that. Anyway, I just want to say these young children are modeling for us from a young age how to learn scripture and learn songs that praise God. So appreciate that very much.
Good Christian men rejoice with heart and soul and voice. Give ye heed to what we say. News, news, Jesus Christ is born today. Ox and ass before him bow, and he is in the manger now. Christ is born today. Christ is born today. Good Christian men rejoice with heart and soul and voice. Now ye hear of endless bliss. Joy, joy, Jesus Christ was born for this. He hath opened heaven's door, and man is blessed forevermore. Christ was born for this. Christ was born for this. Good Christian men rejoice with heart and soul and voice. Now ye need not fear the grave. Peace, peace, Jesus Christ was born to save. Calls you one and call you all to gain his everlasting home. Christ was born to save. Christ was born to save.
I'd have to bounce over it, wouldn't I? I have to be a little bit careful because I think I got a double dose of my ornery pill this morning. Girls, did you notice that you sang your whole song, but they had to have it written down in front of them? But then for the rest of us, the ornery comes out a little bit too. You know, we had some people that were about 4 foot tall and under 10, and we had some people that were, well, shall we just say a little bit older than me? But we didn't have any representation from the Middle Ages, did we there? I think that's pretty neat that we have such a wide range of ages on the platform this morning, such a tremendous demonstration of the desire to worship and praise God and to bring honor to his name. I think that was awesome. I enjoyed that. I've always wondered why we segregate our younger people or our older people off to the sides and not include them in worship as well. We do also include them in discipleship. And we like to start them out early in discipleship, as early as in diapers, with beginning to see the value of Bible stories and remembering short phrases that they can begin the practice of memorizing verses. And then they get to graduate to children's church, where they get to learn all those foundational stories that help us establish our walk with Jesus for our whole life. It's my prayer that those two ministries will be prayed for and supported, that the adults that are involved will be encouraged, and that will start a lifetime practice of Bible intake and Bible literacy and attendance, because it's not just learning that happens in these, it's teaching also as people share what they've learned about Jesus. So please participate in the discipleship ministries here at the church. You'll get to learn things like I'm going to talk about this morning as we're about to look into Jesus' word. Please bow with me so that we can ask for his blessing as we do. Father, it's an honor to remember that Jesus has come. It's a blessing to look at the way the people who participated reacted to Jesus' coming. And it's an important thing to know that those reactions can apply to us today and to learn what we can learn from them. Father, I'm not capable of discerning all the things that you can teach. I know that your Spirit can come and speak to the individual heart in ways that I can't begin to. I pray that you will touch every person in this room with a truth that will magnify their joy in the coming of Jesus Christ this year. I pray it all in Jesus' name. Amen. We have been working through, if you've noticed, pretty much through the book of Luke most of this year. I broke it down into a half a dozen or so different series, but we've looked at Jesus' life through the book of Luke this year. And when we came to Advent season, I thought, why not continue that? So I looked at the Christmas stories in the book of Luke, and I found that there were basically 4 poems, what we would call poems, what the ancient Greeks would have called muses, and we get our word music from that. And so a lot of times these are referred to as songs. If you remember a couple of weeks ago, we looked at the song of Zechariah and the faith that he demonstrated in that song. Last week we heard from the angels who spoke to the shepherds and heard that peace would come with Jesus' arrival. Next week we're going to hear from Simeon, and we're going to see the hope for the future that comes with Jesus' arrival. But this week I want to focus on Mary. Her song brings us joy. And you can see as we look through this that probably Mary was the first person who really got into the Christmas spirit. I am not like Mary in that case. I am not actually a Scrooge, but I don't get into the Christmas spirit quite as much as other people do. In fact, it's kind of a chore for my wife to get me to put up the Christmas tree every year because, it's only 4 weeks. We're going to take it right back down again. I feel like I have a good excuse for feeling that way, or at least some good reasons to contribute to it. I mean, I grew up on a ranch, and it wasn't a small ranch. When you get up every morning and you have to feed 300 steers in the feedlot, or you have to take care of them before you go to bed every night, you don't typically plan for long trips. And so we almost always had our Christmas right at home. It was between Dad's chores, and we had a nice meal, but we didn't do much else. And then I grew up and I went into the healthcare field. And boy, I tell you what, you might be surprised how hard people would work to have to work on Christmas. It was a good deal to get the Christmas duty. You may not know this. I knew this because I was a part of the National Emergency Medical Technicians Association, so I got their magazine every month. And they did some research and found out that on an average day, only about 10% of the ambulance calls are actually thought to be an emergency by the person making the call. So 90% of the calls are not really life-threatening from the start. They know that. But then they did a little more research and found out that only 10% of those, the ones that people thought might be life-threatening, actually were. So only 1% of ambulance calls are life-threatening. Now that plays out in an unusual way on Christmas morning because most people don't want to have to go to the emergency room on the day that the whole family's getting together. So they make less calls. And when they do make calls, they tend to feel better after a professional's looked at them and cancel the call. And so I would go to work on a regular day and run maybe 10 or 12 calls in a day. And on Christmas, many, many years, I didn't make any calls. So it was like getting paid for doing nothing. But it was more than that. Because it was a union shop, I got paid double for being there that day. So I didn't go to my family's Christmas gatherings for a long time after I became a professional paramedic. And you might think, though, that after I quit that career and became a pastor, maybe I would get into the Christmas spirit a little bit more. But you know what happens about the 1st of September every year? About the time school starts, I start getting those calls. Pastor, you're a church. You're in the business of helping people. Would you pay my electric bill this month? Would you pay my gas bill this month? Pastor, I've got 17 kids in my house, and they're all going to freeze if you don't pay my electric bill. And, it would be easy for me to say, we don't do that, call another organization. But I always try to get to know those people. I always try to find out what it is that got them into that position. Find out if there's some way I can help them so that they can get out of the bind they're in and never get back in it. It's a lot of work. Then about, the week before Thanksgiving, I start getting those people who just walk in. And I don't know how they find us. I don't know how they find me. I think they're looking for me sometimes because it's always that guy who's just a little bit schizophrenic. He's not dysfunctional, but he's not right either. And he wants somebody who can help him with his holiday blues. And so you invite him in and you sit and talk to him for an hour or so. And you find out that maybe a little medication would help, but when you recommend that a little, I'll take you down to the clinic and we can get you evaluated. And oh no, I don't want to do that. Well, okay, then let's get together and have a Bible study and talk about the hope we have in Christ. And oh no, I don't want to do that. Pretty soon you figure out that what they really wanted you to do was wave your pastoral magic wand over them and make it all go away. It's a lot of work. And that magnifies as we get further and further into the holiday season. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't enjoy Christmas. It's just to explain to you a little bit why I'm not excited like some people are. And I got a feeling that most people, when it comes to Christmas, have something that is sucking the joy out of it for them. They could be just a little bit more joyful if circumstances were just a little bit different. I did some studying recently on Christmas and why we celebrate it on the day we do. Most people would say Jesus was not born on December 25th, and there's lots of theories of when he would have been born, but I understand why we have it there, but does it really have to be 2 weeks before the end of the year? I mean, most of us have got some kind of a project at work that we've been working on that has a deadline in that last week of December, and that just adds to the stress. Or maybe we've saved all year and we want to have a nice big Christmas with our family, but we just weren't able to save as much as we hoped. Or some family members are not going to make it and we're going to miss somebody, and all kinds of things that take away that joy. I frequently talk to people who can remember how Christmases used to be, and it's always plural. Christmases always used to be all the family, always got together at grandma's house all the time. And when you talk to them, yes, you start asking questions about when did that start, when did that end, and they start to tell the stories, and you realize that what they basically had was one really good Christmas that they're trying to recreate. And then there's the really harsh realities. Since last Christmas, some people aren't here anymore. And we're facing that first series of holidays, missing people. Joy at Christmas time should come easily. But joy for many people at Christmas time doesn't come easily. And as you think about all of those things that mix together to create the atmosphere of Christmas, you would think that Mary would be the most despondent of all. We really tend to read Mary's story with the end result in mind, but she didn't have that privilege. Mary probably had the most reason of anybody in history to be blue on Christmas. Mary's condition, we all know, was she was pregnant. Mary had been a faithful follower of her God and tried to do all the things that were in their scriptures, what we call the Old Testament, in order to honor God. And she lived in a hard place to do that. Nazareth was a city that one of the apostles actually had the gall to ask the question, does anything good come out of Nazareth? No, it was a construction community. The Romans were building a huge recruitment and training center nearby there, and they were inundated with Roman culture. And Mary had grown up in that and struggled to be faithful to the scriptures. And one day, she's visited by an angel. And she, like most people, was scared to death when she saw the angel. The angel said, calm down. I bring good news. You're going to have a baby. You know, Mary was somewhere around 13 years old at this point. And that was not really unusual for a 13-year-old to start thinking that way. That's, you know, I want to get married. I want to move in with my husband. I want to have his babies. I want to help him with his business. You know, they had dreams and wishes too. And so Mary might have thought to herself, you know, well, duh, of course I'm going to have a baby. I'm a Jewish woman in the first century. But then Gabriel said, no, you're going to have a baby before you're married. We don't think of that in our culture. Somewhere in the neighborhood of half of the births every year in our culture today are from unwed mothers. But in their culture, that was a bigger deal. You see, in Jewish culture, especially for a young lady who was trying to live in a way that honored Jesus, that was a death sentence. The Mosaic law said that when a young lady was found to be pregnant outside of wedlock, her parents were supposed to bring her to the city elders. The city elders were supposed to take her to the gate of the city, if it was a walled city, or to the main road that went into the village. And they were supposed to bury her in rocks. We call it stoning. They would look for rocks about the size of a brick. And if they were really gracious, they would aim for her head so that she didn't have to feel it all. And the entire community was supposed to build a mound of rocks over the top of her that would stay there so that anyone who entered that community would see that this town honors God. This town will not tolerate dishonoring God. And when Gabriel gets done explaining that Mary's going to have a baby, she says, well, that can't be. I honor God. I haven't been with a man. Well, but God's going to conceive something in you. The Spirit of God is going to come into you. And Mary does the only thing, I think, that could have both honored God and, quite frankly, ended that conversation. She said, let it be to me as He wills. I am the servant. We tend to miss that that is a acquiescence to her death. But one thing Gabriel did say, as he was proclaiming all of these details to Mary, he said, your relative. Now, some Bible translations say cousin. That's a good translation because it speaks of a female relative that's not in the household. So your cousin is Elizabeth. She's too old to have babies, but she's 6 months along. And Mary's little light went on. I know what I'll do. I'll go help Elizabeth with her pregnancy, and I can get out of town for a little while. And so she goes wherever it was that Elizabeth lives. The scripture doesn't tell us. And she spends 3 months with Elizabeth until John is born. And as she approaches Elizabeth got a funny look on her face because the baby inside leapt for joy. And Elizabeth instinctively knew that meant that the baby Mary is carrying is the Lord that John has come to proclaim. And Mary, realizing that she has just got out of Nazareth by the skin of her teeth, responds to that. And you would think, or at least I would think, she would say, what do you mean, blessed am I? I'm going to die. I got to go back to Nazareth 3 months pregnant. They're going to know, and they're going to kill me. But she doesn't. Notice what she says. In verse 46, Mary said, my soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior. This verse acts as an introduction to the whole poem. And Mary describes her soul as one that magnifies God. It's the same word that we would use for magnifying something. You think of a magnifying glass and how you can point it at something and look through it and kind of move it up and down and bring it into focus. She's saying her soul makes something big of God. Makes him bigger than he was before because he's done great things. And it brings him into focus. It focuses what he's trying to do. And as Mary describes her soul in that way, she then talks about her spirit rejoicing in God, her Savior. Interesting word, Savior. As Christians in the 21st century, we think of Savior as the one on the cross. And we should, the vast majority of times. But I think this time she's declaring she knows that God is going to get her through this. God is going to rescue her from the death she knows the law would require. She knows she doesn't deserve it. She knows that God has planned it. And so she knows God is going to do something that she doesn't even really understand yet. But she's going to rely on him. Now, what is it that can help a person who is literally facing a death sentence find that much joy? I think the important thing to notice here is Mary's focus. Mary has realized that bad times can motivate us towards despair, but in her case, it brought joy in her life because she was focused on something other than we would focus on. Notice she starts by focusing on what God has done for her. God has done some amazing things for her specifically. As we read here in verse 48, it says, for he has looked on the humble estate of his servant. For behold, from now on all generations will call me blessed. For he who is mighty has done great things for me. Me and I in this is everywhere. God has looked on her. He has seen the trouble that she's in. You remember the story of Hagar in the Old Testament? Abraham was supposed to have a child, start a whole nation. And it wasn't happening. And Sarah got impatient. She was 90 years old. And she probably wasn't necessarily excited about being pregnant and wanted to get this thing going. So she basically looked at Abraham and said, I'm not going to do it. But I got this teenage girl from Egypt. Why don't you produce through her and I'll adopt the child? And so Abraham did it. I think it's the dumbest thing he ever did. Because now he's got to live with Sarah. And it turns out that years later, Sarah does have a child and doesn't like Hagar and her son hanging around. So she talks Abraham into kicking him out right in the middle of the desert. And they go off into the desert and they run out of water and Hagar can't stand it. So she puts the boy under a bush and goes about a bow shot away, it says. Lays down and prays. Basically, the prayer was, God, get it over with quickly. He taps her on the shoulder and says, would you open your eyes? And there's a well right there, a well of water. So she gives water to the boy, she drinks, and then she says, God has looked on my affliction. And she gives God a new name, El Roi. In Hebrew, it's pronounced more like El Rohi. But we use the word El Roi as a name for God, the God who sees. the God who looks in on our troubles. And I just suspect Mary knew that story. And Mary was thinking of how God looked in on her troubles and met her needs. And after that, he made her blessed. She makes that statement that many of us can quote, "From now on, all nations or all generations will call me blessed." I love that word, blessed. It's so fun to think about because we don't have an English word for what the Greek actually says. The Greek is the verb form of happy, but it's in the passive tense. And the only proper way to translate it into English, you can't put it in a Bible like this because it's not good English, but the only proper way to understand the word is happyfied. And all the nations are going to say she's been the most happyfied woman of all history. Finally, she says that God has used his might on her behalf. And really, you think about someone's ability, the ability to cause a pregnancy without violating the law of Moses. And then to convince the community that she's in that she hasn't, so that she can carry that baby to term and deliver that baby and raise that baby, that takes an awful lot of influence. And she knows God is going to use that on her behalf. But she doesn't just camp on what God has done for her. She also focuses on what God has done and is doing for others. And the rest of this poem reads like a bullet list. She doesn't do a lot of explaining. She just mentions how God is going to be merciful to the people of the world and how God is going to show his strength and the ability to do things that other people can't do. How he's brought the mighty down. Those people who have what we would say today, have made their success on the backs of others. He's going to bring those people down, but he's also going to exalt those people who have lived humbly. You read the rest of this New Testament where it talks about how in days to come yet for us, when Jesus returns, we're going to have significant roles in the kingdom that he's going to start. Not to mention the significance we have of meeting together on a Sunday morning and worshiping and studying his word and living a different lifestyle. God is going to exalt those who are humble. He's filled the hungry, she says, those who have physical needs, those who are starving. And if you look at the history of the Christian church traditionally, consistently feeds those who can't find food for themselves. But she says something else in here that's a little bit different. God also empties the rich. Those who are so arrogant and so self-serving that they cause others to be in want are going to be in want themselves. And finally, she goes back to her heritage and reminds us of how God is at her point in time fulfilling the promises made to Abraham. He's going to help Abraham's descendants. A tremendous bullet list of all the blessings that have come because Jesus has come. Mary, in what may have been the most despondent time of her life, found her joy in focusing on what God has done for herself and for others. In fact, that's kind of the way we would summarize this. Remembering what God has done strengthened Mary's joy. Now, I don't want you to miss this, okay? I've said it a couple of times, but I want to make it as clear as I can. This song is expressing joy when joy didn't make any sense. We might be tempted to look at Mary and the condition she was in and say, she's nuts, she's lost it. The stress has got to her. But we need to look at what she was focusing on. All the things that God has done and how good they are. Now, that brings out a couple of truths for us today. What are we basing our joy on? Well, if we're following Mary's example, we'll remember that bad times don't necessarily need to diminish our joy. As believers in Jesus Christ, Christ is still on the throne. Christ's program is still happening. Yes, there may be things that could steal our joy if we let them. But if we focus on Jesus, the joy strengthens instead of weakens. But if we only look at the things Jesus has done for us, we miss out on some of the strength. We have to focus on all that's been done. All the things that God has accomplished for everyone. You know, for believers in Jesus Christ, we've got enough just in the good news that Jesus has come to be joyful in any circumstance. I mean, it's very difficult for me to understand the Christmas story without understanding the Easter story. It's kind of a flat story without remembering that the same baby that was born in the stall and laid in a feed trough and worshiped by shepherds is the one that was rejected by the religious leaders, hung on a cross, and died. You know, he lived that entire, probably 33 years, never did anything wrong. Goody two-shoes. That's what the religious leaders basically accused him of. He's too good for us. We can't stand to have somebody around like that. He's making us look bad. Let's get rid of him. But when God saw it happen, he said, he doesn't deserve to die. He's the only person who could claim to be human and did not deserve to die. He never did anything that violated his Father's will. And so when he died, the Father chose to honor him and say, all of your righteousness is yours to give to anyone you want to. They can exchange their unrighteousness for your righteousness. And Jesus said, this is my imagination working again, Jesus looked at his dad and said, okay, but only if I can give it as a free gift. Only if I can give it and ask for nothing in return. Think about that. That's hard to grasp, isn't it? All of the blessings of being adopted into God's family and become a co-heir with Jesus Christ, and he asks for nothing in return. Think of it like this. A lot of us in here are grandparents, or have kids of our own at least. And you studied and thought all year about that person and what are you going to give them for Christmas? And you pick out the perfect Christmas gift. Maybe it's for one of my grandkids, he's really into Pokemon computer games, so I get him a computer game with Pokemon, and he would just love that. And I would give it to him, and he would open it, and he would get all excited. And then he looked at me and said, Grandpa, that's the perfect Christmas gift. I'll never get anything better. What do I owe you? That would be a little bit insulting, wouldn't it? It's my gift. I give it to you because I love you, and I want you to enjoy it. It's free. Oh, no, Grandpa, I got to pay you something back for this. Just enjoy it. That's what God is saying. Jesus bought the perfect Christmas gift with his own blood. And he gives it to you for free. All you have to do is take it. You do have to take it. But all you have to do is take it. And there's nothing you can do to pay him back except enjoy it. Enjoy a close relationship with Him. Enjoy the benefits of living in good, close relationship with your family and your friends. Focusing on what God has done, what He's given us, will enhance our joy. That will enhance our joy year-round. Every time you get bummed out. Now, I have to put in my little footnote here. I do this every time I get to this point. If you have a biochemical imbalance that requires medication, use your pills and thank God for them. But for the rest of us, where our despondency comes from focusing on the circumstances, don't forget to include Jesus in those circumstances, because He's fixed it all. He'll get you through it. He'll love you forever. Every day of the year, you can have joy. But especially focusing on Jesus, focusing on what He's done, will give us joy at Christmas time. Don't forget that. Focus on Jesus. Let's pray. Oh, Father, it's so easy for us to get out of focus. We have to confess that we are by nature distractible. We are in a world where our senses override our knowledge. When we watch too much news on TV, it's easy to forget all the things that you've done and all the things you've promised to do. We thank you for your grace. We ask you to extend that grace into every area of our life. And through us, extend that grace to people who need it, so that more people will focus on all the things Jesus has done, is doing, and will do. Help us to understand where we fit in to the great things you're still doing today. And help us to rejoice. I pray for it in Jesus' name. Amen.